Hello, everyone. Steve the Amateur Historian here. How you doing? Hope you're doing okay in these trying times that continue to be trying ceaselessly. I am here today to talk to you about something that is actually very, very important and is not taken seriously by enough people, some doctors included. And that is you should be trying to take multivitamins every day when you can. It's very seldom that we get the amount of vitamins we need unless we need a small amount each day. So it's important to have kind of a feel for where you're at in terms of the vitamins and minerals that you're taking in and what those levels are at. And one of the best ways to do that is, if you have the ability to see a doctor, is to have them do a blood test, but make sure they do a full blood test. Don't just say, I want blood tests, I want my blood work done. Because sometimes doctors don't, my doctor just, like I said numerous times, I want my full blood work done. I haven't had it done in a year. He tested my cholesterol, my liver, and my kidneys, and that was it. And so you have to be specific. Say, I want my like calcium levels checked. I want my vitamin level. Anything you can check in a blood test, I want that checked. And I know in some ways, there's alternatives to having to go to the hospital, alternatives to not having any health insurance and not having a primary doctor. I know some urgent care places can do blood work, so if you can do it for a cheap amount, that's hopefully an alternative that you can pursue if you don't have health care, because we live in America and, apparently our health is less important than people in other nations. At least that's how our government behaves. So we got to do the best we can on our own to stay healthy and make sure our vitamin levels are, because if we just ignore how we're treating ourselves, how little physical activity we're getting, how little food we're eating. Of course, I've had to learn a lot of this the hard way myself. I'm trying to impart this onto you, so hopefully some of you don't have to deal with this same stuff. In America, it is incredibly difficult to keep track, or to, if you don't take care of yourself and then some issue comes along, if you don't have health care, like, you could be in a lot of trouble if you can't just go see a doctor without it ruining you financially. So it's really important to try to do the best you can to understand your body and to do the best you can to take care of it, so hopefully those major issues don't come along. And if you have to go a while without having health insurance, and you have to go a while without possibly having it be realistic for you to even see a doctor, you got to do the best you can to take care of yourself. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I'm here to talk to you about vitamin D intake. There's a lot of misinformation or possibly disinformation out there about vitamin D, how much you should have, how important it really is. And I'm speaking from experience when I say that there's a lot of stuff you should not be listening to in terms of specifically your vitamin D intake. So let's get into it. Now, there are varying degrees of what doctors describe as having a proper level of vitamin D. And how your vitamin D is measured, it comes down to a specific number, and that number is part of an equation, so to speak. So the number you get from that equation, that is where your vitamin D blood levels are at. Now, every time I've seen a doctor and we've discussed vitamin D directly, they say you want to be at 50 to 60. Every doctor I've ever had has said that. Some say, as long as you're above 40, you're okay. There are other doctors who say, first of all, not only does your vitamin D levels only have to be above 20 for you to be okay, but I've read, and I'm talking like, journalistic articles. I've read articles from Harvard students, Yale students, Ivy League kids, who have literally written and stated that getting your vitamin D tested, your levels tested, is really not a necessary thing. It's usually kind of a waste of time. And I could not disagree more. And people kind of in that same vein also are the ones that argue that, as long as you're above 20, you're pretty much okay. Now, obviously, every deficiency, every kind of thing that can go wrong in your body is going to affect different people differently. Something that might affect me horribly might barely affect you at all. COVID-19. Some people are asymptomatic. Some people are asymptomatic and come away feeling like nothing ever happened. Some people are young and healthy, get COVID-19 and have 3 months ago and they're still having symptoms. I mean, everything affects everyone differently. But I'm speaking from experience from someone who has seen the dark side when it comes to not keeping track of your vitamin D. And this never even crossed my mind until the start of 2015 when I actually had my blood work done and had my D levels checked for the first time. Going all the way back to the tail end, about Christmas time 2013, I started noticing aches and pains in my arms. I started noticing some queasiness and some discomfort in my abdomen that would just kind of come and go. I would, and these kind of happened off and on going into 2014, and then they went away. And then about the start of November 2014, went home from church one day, all of a sudden my heart rate was just through the roof, 120, 130 beats per minute. No activity, wasn't doing anything. And so it scared the living hell out of me. And I thought it was like stress. I thought it was like stress anxiety. I'd had a really busy 2014, and I thought my body was just getting wiped out. So I was like, okay, just chill and just rest for a week, and then the discomfort went away. And then a few days later it came back, and then it lingered. And I'm like, okay, this is really starting to bother me that it's hanging around for so long. And then it went away for a whole week, and then it came back. And finally I realized I got to see a doctor. And I had just gotten on the Oregon Health Plan. It took me a couple weeks before I could see a doctor, but at least I could see a doctor. And so, here I was, I'd been just practically bedbound with this horrible discomfort. And literally, if I was laying down and my heart rate was, say, 70 beats per minute, going from a laying down to a sitting upright position, that alone made my heart rate go from about 70 to 120, 130 beats per second. That's frightening, per minute. Like, all it took was sitting up. And I started developing really bad, because you get muscle and bone pain, so it is a deep pain you get, and I felt it mostly in my arms. They say it happens a lot in your arms and a lot in your hips, but it can happen anywhere on your body, because essentially, and here I thought I was like dying. I was so worried. I get my blood work done, they come back and tell me, hey, your blood work was immaculate, except one thing. You remember the number levels you want to be at. Optimal vitamin D, based on how I understand it, is like 50 to 60, 50 to 70. That's where you want your number to be. Some doctors say 20 is fine. After 2.5 months of literally debilitating discomfort, I just stopped living pretty much because I was in so much discomfort. The only thing that was wrong was my vitamin D level was low. My vitamin D was at a 17. So I was barely underneath a 20, and I'd been in that much pain and that much discomfort. I was practically bedridden for 2.5 months because I was just so wiped out, and it hits you everywhere. It literally, and when the pain gets its worst, it rivals the kind of discomfort you can get from like Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, these other things that just make you feel weak and broken down. And again, different things affect different people differently. It's the best way to put it. So I don't know if a lot of people feel it as badly as I do, but the amount of pain I had to go through, I don't wish on anyone. And it reoccurred periodically in the winter because I'd keep forgetting to start taking my vitamin D supplements. The first time this happened, I had a prescription of weekly, I took them once a week, these little pills that were 50,000 units of vitamin D. And mind you, and of course the number keeps rising because I think doctors are realizing more and more how important vitamin D is. It used to be they'd say, you can get 400 units a day. Then it became 5, 6, it was 700 for a while. I think recently they suggested getting more like 800. And there's, others say, 700 to 1,000 a day is usually good enough. And I could not disagree more. I think you should be taking at least, and again, if you have a certain condition that this could affect you, obviously get that figured out. But for just a normal living person, I think you need to be getting at least 2,000 units a day. Now again, I'm not a doctor, never said I am. I'm speaking from experience to you guys. And I can tell you that I pretty much have to get at least probably 4,000 to 6,000 units a day. Summer, fall, winter, spring, doesn't matter. Some people just need it more than others, but I'm saying, especially, they say you're almost guaranteed to have a deficiency in some degree if you live north of the 35th parallel. And the 35th parallel essentially wraps through the southern edge of the United States. Essentially, if you live north of Los Angeles, you're more or less you're above that the 35th parallel. And if you live above the 35th parallel, the amount of sun you can get, the amount of vitamin D you can naturally get from the sun decreases drastically. And in the winter, if you live above the 35th parallel, from November to March, you do not get any vitamin D pretty much from the sun because it's never at a high enough angle. It has to be more than at a 35-degree angle for you to get the proper UV rays to get you your vitamin D intake naturally. And see, that's the issue, is a lot of people don't take supplements, and it's, especially if, again, you're living north of that 35th parallel, it is extremely difficult to get the amount of vitamin D you really need through your food. Even if it's vitamin D enriched food and you're eating it all the time, we're still talking about just a couple hundred units a day, really, in most cases. So it is really important to not rely exclusively on your food. Just say, oh, I'm eating vitamin D infused food, but not really paying attention to how much vitamin D you're actually getting from it. And if you can't get it directly from the sun, which of course is a lot of us in America, especially in the colder winter months, you really need to take supplements for your vitamin D. I seriously wouldn't wish the discomfort, especially when it peaks, when it gets the worst. I would not wish that on anybody, even people I don't like. And this, I posted a video not too long ago talking about how angry I was because my doctor wanted me to go get tested for COVID because I told him, oh, I'm having these aches. And what really ultimately showed me that this was another vitamin D thing. Again, it's weird having it during the summer, but it's important to understand we went into quarantine, and essentially this spring, where usually I'd be outside more and getting more natural vitamin D, I was indoors. This spring, going into the start of summer, was practically another winter for me. So there's where you can get a deficiency in vitamin D, especially, sorry, bee just flew in my face. So especially with the quarantine, probably a lot more people are getting even more deficient than usual because a lot of us are staying home more often. Even with, here we are, it's dead of summer, and a lot of us are still staying inside. So a lot of us are probably getting even more deficient in their vitamin D than they usually are. So, you got one side saying, getting your blood tested, it's not really that important. Some people even argue that vitamin D is really not that important, or, we don't really know exactly how much it actually does for you, but it's known to have several beneficial qualities to it in terms of it can help with it literally helps with that's why I had those horrible stomach discomfort. When your vitamin D drops, you can develop a lot of random stomach issues. And of course, you have the bone and muscle and joint pain because literally, you put your vitamin D goes into your system, it then gets cycled through your liver and your kidneys and, goes to where it needs to go. And that's how it utilizes your calcium to go into your bones, to keep your bones strong, and to keep your, even it helps with your muscle. Your muscles are, attached to your bones. So if you don't have enough vitamin D, then you're not getting that proper amount of calcium you need, being utilized to, keep your bones strong. That's why if you don't pay attention to this and you stay deficient for long periods of time, you can develop osteoporosis. Even if you're incredibly healthy or you're active, you can develop osteoporosis. You can get soft bones. You can be more subject to fractures. And again, if you don't have medical insurance and you break a bone in your leg or something, and all of a sudden you can't walk, some of you might not even be able to go to the hospital, even in a dire situation like that, where a bone just snaps on you. So obviously, I'm not trying to tell you exactly what to do with your life. I'm saying keep track of what's going on. And especially, if you live north of that 35th parallel, if you live in the Pacific Northwest, if you live in the Great Lakes area, the New England area, the northern Midwest, the northern mountain range, odds are you're probably already deficient if you're not taking supplements regularly. You're probably at least a little bit deficient. And, I read a story from a doctor who said, she started having the pain and she had her blood work done. This was a doctor, and she said that her number for her vitamin D was at a 29. She started taking supplements, started boosting them, and within a week she felt better. Here I I wanted to go see my doctor. He was trying to get me tested for COVID, thinking this is COVID related, because unfortunately my doctor, I'm going to get a new doctor, but unfortunately my doctor is one of those types of guys who, if he doesn't have to see you, he'll try to find a way to not to. So hey, if somehow I tested positive for COVID, he'd be like, oh, well, that's why your arm's hurting. And it's like, no, I'm not going to just accept that. So I started realizing, one of the things I noticed was whenever my aches started happening, the abdominal cramps started at the exact same time. And that is a very key sign that you, if you've experienced this too, that you might be experiencing really deficient vitamin D, is when the cramping and discomfort in your abdominal stomach area, when that flares up, it's very simultaneous with when you start having the muscle and bone discomfort. And that was how I was able to kind of track, you know what, I think this is vitamin D again. A week ago today, I felt horrible. I laid in bed all day. I was just putting icy hot all over me just to numb the pain, and even that wasn't working that well. I've spiked my vitamin D in the past week. See, the important thing to understand is if you're deficient, you can't just take your daily, you can't just start taking supplements. You can't just start taking 1,000 a day because you're deficient. You need to be taking more than you take on an average day. Now, if you're down, you know, around a certain number, 20, 25, like you need to be taking like 6, 7, 8,000 units a day for a while. Now, again, talk to your doctor about this. Don't just start, if you start having pain that's similar to mine, don't just start dumping vitamin D down your throat. But I'm trying to explain the pain that you often have, because a lot of people, I think, get this pain and this discomfort and think it's something else and don't think it's vitamin D. I spent 2.5 months back in 2014, literally every day, every second, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I never came to the conclusion that it could be vitamin D based. And when they showed me that my vitamin D was low, I started looking up the side effects to being vitamin D deficient. They talked about muscle aches, bone pain, you know, major stomach cramps, you know, fluctuating heart rate, all the stuff that I was having. This is one of the reasons that I feel like this is really important for me to impart this onto people, is you could be experiencing a lot of pain and your doctor, you know, maybe you discuss with your doctor and he's like, oh, maybe you just have a this or that. Just take a muscle relaxer. Just put some icy hot on it and you'll be fine. And really you might have, not even necessarily just a vitamin D deficiency. You might have something else. You know, you could have iron anemia. I don't know. But I definitely think there's a very passive attitude, especially some people in the medical community, about the importance of vitamin D. People who say you only need it to be at 20, if your doctor is saying, oh, you're at a 20, so you're fine on your vitamin D, get a new doctor, because that doctor either doesn't know what they're talking about or they don't really care that much about your health. You should be at least up around a 40. Obviously, you're going to probably be a little bit lower in the winter time, but you know, even when I've gotten up in around 30, in the low 30s, I've still experienced muscle discomfort. And I just downloaded an app that I'm using now to track how much vitamin D I'm getting from the sun and my supplements, so I literally can keep track of what I'm getting every single day. It's a really cool app. It takes vitamin D a while to work. If you're taking your supplements regularly and you're deficient and then you spike it, it'll work for you a little bit faster. But if you're just not taking any supplements and you're deficient and all of a sudden you just start taking supplements, it's going to take a lot longer for you, and it's going to depend on how deficient you are. It can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months for supplements to really start working, and unfortunately that's really the best thing to do if you're vitamin D deficient. It's not like ibuprofen where you pop a bunch of them and, you know, within an hour all of a sudden you feel better. It takes a long time. So know that going in. Know that just because you found out that the pain you're having is vitamin D deficiency related, don't think you're going to feel better in 48 hours. Like, you're going to have to endure it, but at least you figured out what it is. Because not knowing, for me, freaked me out. And if you have a deficiency and you continue to allow it to run rampant without being checked, and you just stay deficient, and maybe you're not feeling much pain from it, so you don't even realize, the longer you go being deficient, and then the older you get, the more and more your chances increase for osteoporosis, for soft bones to end up having a fracture, even if you're not being that physically active. So it just really bothers me that there's a lot of people out there that don't really take vitamin D seriously. And, I would say probably more than half the people on the planet are vitamin D deficient to some level or another. And I think the further north you live, the more likely you're to be even more deficient. So try to get, if you can. Obviously, the important thing is, like, if you want to get some naturally from the sun, it's important to realize, well, don't stay out in the sun all day, because you can, get sunburned, your gradual increased risks of possible skin cancer. But still, if you can get, again, depending on your health, where you're at, if you can get like 10, minutes in the sun, if it's this time of the year and you get out during the noon hour, noon to 1 o'clock, you can get several thousand units of vitamin D in 10 minutes of exposure. And that's if, like, let's say I'm outside and I'm just wearing shorts and my shirt's off. The more of your body that is exposed to the sun, the more skin there is for, the UV rays to hit. I feel like I'm telling you how to just die. The UV rays just come in and hit you. But the more your skin that's visible, the more vitamin D you're going to soak in. So if you go outside and you're like, I'm going to try to get a little bit of vitamin D in me. I think I just said vitamin C a second ago, but you know what I'm talking about. If you go outside and you're dressed in a long sleeve shirt and pants, you're not going to get that much vitamin D. You need to have as much skin exposure as possible when you're soaking in that vitamin D. And again, if you go out during that noon to 1 o'clock hour, that's when you're going to soak up the most vitamin D. And again, the more your skin that's exposed, the more you're going to get. You can get, your 2,000 units. You can get that in literally like a minute or two at that hour of the day. So I think it's important for everyone who has the potential, has the opportunity, to go get your vitamin D checked with your doctor. Obviously, get everything checked. But if your vitamin D levels are below a 40, start taking supplements. You don't have to go crazy, but again, maybe like 2,000 units a day, enough to kind of start moving you up. And the app that I got, it actually, wherever your vitamin D level is at, it will tell you. And you can choose where you want to get to. Do you want to get to a 40? Do you want to get to a 45? And it will tell you how much you need to take daily to build to that point. And again, once you get your blood checked, obviously if your vitamin D is very deficient, hopefully your doctor is going to take it seriously and prescribe you a certain amount of vitamin D to take each day. But if you have a doctor, your vitamin D is under 30, and you have a doctor acting like that's not significant and that's not a big deal, you need to get a new doctor, for one. And two, start taking supplements. Even if they say, oh, you're at a 26, you're fine. I was probably about a 25, 26 when I was having my worst pain. And by the way, I've been almost, not entirely, because I also laid on my back and didn't do anything for several days. My body tightened up, I'm getting back into exercising again because I just stopped for a long period of time because I was in so much discomfort. But after about 5 days of spiking my vitamin D levels, I've had limited discomfort the last few days. So, and I hope it stays that way, because I want to circumvent even having to go see my doctor right now, because he clearly doesn't want to take the time. And again, I don't want to tell people what to do. I'm just telling you that this is a very serious thing. And don't wait until it's too big of a problem, or until it's a problem that's been going on too long and there may suddenly not be anything they can do about it. I don't want you have some pain going on, it happens off and on for a while, and you don't know why, and you don't really do anything about it, and then you find out you've been vitamin D deficient for the last 10 years, and then, a little while on down the road, you end up getting scoliosis, or you get a bone fracture by just walking out in your backyard. You're like, why did that happen? That could be the reason why. I'm trying to impart the errors of my ways and my personal experience to tell you that this is a very important thing to have. And there are medical people out there that flat out deny that. And that puts people's lives in danger. It puts their health in danger, especially their skeletal structure. I don't want people to be having their bones snapping in pieces on them. I don't want people to suddenly wake up one morning and they can't walk normal anymore because they haven't been checking on this kind of stuff. So it's just, it's been something that's been heavily on my mind for the past week because it's been back bothering me again. And it's just something, when it gets bad, you're going to wish you would have taken action earlier because it can get really, really painful, even when you're not horribly deficient. And I don't want any of you to have to go through that. So if you haven't had your vitamin D tested in a long time, or maybe you're having random muscle aches and random bone pain, and maybe you're having stomach cramps, and maybe your heart rate is a little wild and crazy, little things like that are happening, go see your doctor or a doctor if you can, and try to get them to test your vitamin D, because that discomfort you're having could be because you're vitamin D deficient. That's all. I just want you all to be healthy. I know it's getting harder and harder and harder. 2020 has been an absolute joke. I just want to help you all the best I can, little by little by little by little. Take care of yourself. And this is I've been blessed with almost unblemished health. The only real issues I've had have been reoccurring over the past 6-7 years, random, muscle and whatever pain. And every time I realize, oh, well, that's because my vitamin D is probably down again. I start popping my vitamin D, and all of a sudden the pain and discomfort goes away, and I feel normal and happy and healthy again, which is kind of where I'm getting to now again. So, I mean, again, it's important. If you're vitamin D deficient, it's important to remember where you live. It's important to boost your supplements during the winter because you're not getting any from the sun, any vitamin D from the sun. And it's important to get supplements year-round. At least make sure you're getting that 1,000 a day, if nothing else. That's all I have to impart on you. It's a very important thing, and not a lot of people talk about it. It's kind of dismissed in terms of health importance, and that's messed up, and I'm speaking from experience. You do not want to know what it feels like when your vitamin D gets really deficient, and it literally shuts your life down. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, take care of yourself. Hopefully this video might help some of you out there that maybe don't know why you're having certain aches or something, and you might get it checked and find out it's vitamin D related. I mean, that's why I'm doing this. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. As always, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. I'm talking really quickly because I didn't want this video to get too long. Hit up my Patreon if you want to help me out that way. Whew. Until next time, everybody. This has been Steve, the Amateur Historian. Take care of yourself. I'll see you later.